Americanborn, Psalms of the Silent Nation, by Joseph Leo Hickey III. Narrated by the author. Published by Melodium House. This book was initially published in 2021. Introductory information. Harmony and Leafy are dead. 50 years have passed since the day when Harmony, the South African political activist, was murdered during a national television broadcast. After her death, her vision was forsaken, and the nation descended on its path of racial division, hatred, and poverty. After so long, there was still no hope of healing of the wounds caused by the crimes of the pro-apartheid government. Now, a xenophobic, communist extremist political party, known as the Sons of the Soil, has seized military control of South Africa. Many of the world's other first world countries, facing economic disaster, have descended into chaos. The most notable of these nations is what is left of the United States. Harmony was a prolific writer with great visions for her nation, and left a large corpus of works behind. Some of these were found, but none were paid any notice until recently, when a new body of manuscripts was found. They, the slaves of the South, are the happiest and in some sense the freest people in the world. George Fitzhugh, 1857. Every shipwrecked soul knows what it means to live without intimacy. You too, every breaking wave. There is neither Jew nor Greek, there is neither slave nor free, there is no male or female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. St. Paul, Galatians 3:28 ESV. CD number 7. 269. From the perspective of all. I gave up on my dreams. From Leafy's perspective, while I was gazing up at the clouds in my youth, I knew that emotions are temporary. Feelings pass and flutter away. From Harmony's perspective, if we feel these same emotions in our afterlife, our hearts will beat together forever. From Leafy's perspective, I searched the whole wide world just to find you. When I grasped your hand, I guided you, and was led by you to places where we would find beauty together. From Harmony's perspective, all hatred would dissipate. It would not be able to reach me. I walked the streets of Chicago with you. Next year you would walk them alone. All riots cascaded up and down, fires everywhere. As you stand alone amidst the flames, you are the true voice of the unheard. From the perspective of Leafy, I wish I was better at expressing my doubts and fears. From Harmony's perspective, arise, O Lord, and save me, O my God. From Leafy's perspective, our revolution is a silent one. We sing all the psalms of the silent nation. 270A. From Harmony's perspective, now more than ever, we are drowning in the sea of no future. They burned the spa. They torched the mall. Explosions in the night. I stood outside my front door and heard gunshots and felt the ash fall on my hands. The streets which were once my home, now filled with terror. I didn't stand or creep alone. I stood amongst them, watching them, marching through their crowds, lonely in a world where hope is derided. When the mobs realized they could get away with cheating, they realized they could get away with stealing, and soon after realized that no one was there to stop them. And the murder started and never stopped. A country brought to its very knees in the swell of its own revolution. There were no voices left except for the flares of flames inebriating these dark skies, which will forever now be filled with smoke. Whenever we built something beautiful, it was burned back down again. We loved life in a world that could only fall apart. We danced amidst the flames. We wanted the morning to be different. It wasn't. Every day from now on was the same. Our nation was like a war zone. The innocent were the first to die in the flames, because they had no arms to take up to defend themselves. Then, the only ones left were the guilty ones. I wanted to wake up, but couldn't. No one was there to shake me. No love strong enough to force me up. I anticipated the life lived here would never end. that I would be stuck here forever, the long and dreadful path to communism. Voices rise, the revolutions flail, and from the contorting body of the revolution arises a mutant monster beyond any of our nightmares. And we follow this monster to where it led us, the authoritarian police state regime. And I was led, and I knew I would never see my Leafy again. 270 B. From Leafy's perspective. The days passing like time is eternally lapsing. When I come home to my apartment after the torturous 9 to 5, working construction, arms can barely move, scrapes and cuts all over. From Harmony's perspective. The future is and was always destined to be like this. Nothing can separate us from the cancer in our bones. And I know you can hear me in your heart. From Leafy's perspective, I crash into my bed, unable to move, because I wish you were here, but you are not. Life is like now a burning ocean. The love we have turns to despair, and we recognize that we may never return to the world from which we were thrust out of into that night. And all of our things were thrown out onto the street. No recognition for how valuable they were to us. From Harmony's perspective, hearts breaking relentlessly, one disaster after another. Dreams we have about those who steal all of our money, leaving us with absolutely nothing come true. I stand at the post office and send out letters all across the world, because we rarely pay attention to those who live across our street. From Leafy's perspective, in this night I toss and turn, completely unable to sleep. The hours are arduous, and because I will never fall asleep, I will never be close again to the hope in my dreams. That is so distant that I can only feel it in my dreams, and will not experience these dreams in any other world than the one underneath my mind, beneath the upper layer of my soul. But nothing can penetrate except when I sink and slip down further into dreams. If the light of my body is my eyes, then our dreams will be filled with fire, and then with darkness and ashes all across our minds. From Harmony's perspective, our lives were destroyed in the season of hope, and with our lives the hopes of our nations were extinguished forever. From Leafy's perspective, and we slipped down the river of forever, and fell down the waterfall and were swept far off to a place where we would never feel the warmth in the world again. Always the seething cold, and the birds in the sky were nowhere to be found. The stars had also fled away. From Harmony's perspective, and the night was darker than the abyss itself. From Leafy's perspective, we floated through the river, down and further down into a place where our dreams became vicious as well, and there was nothing at all we could do to escape from the pain in our inner souls. The stores were completely looted. The life in the world was bruised, and we could not move without feeling the torment. With every step we took, we found new enemies, new corporations that wanted to take advantage of our weakness in this world. So we followed the guide in our hearts that took us far away from where we had grown comfortable. The cash in hand we never had. The closed doors of the world told us that this world was never ours. Our enemy was our own human nature, the time within our hearts that clawed away at us, telling us that each day would pass but slowly. And so we met each other within the world. And I remembered the songs we used to sing together. Si te vas, yo también me voy. Si me das, yo también me doy. From Harmony's perspective, our dancing feet throughout the world. My Leafy, you were always there when we would laugh at the anger the world had toward us. You were always there when our anthem came back together as one single whole symphony. The world is our blank canvas, through which we will express our charity. From Leafy's perspective, if you have dreams, know that I've been sinking deeply into these same depths. 271a. This morning I walked through this nation. Arising from my misfortune, I spread myself wide, across the states and between the borders. Illinois will always be my home in the desert of a world where all of us long for love. We hold on to what we have and know that this nation will never descend the path that can never return into the darkness of communism, when our laws become meaningless, when the riots flooded the streets. The person who was right was always the one with the most firearms, the most maces, clubs, bats, to bloody and bruise us with. Strength, the true rule of justice, the only measure by which we know who was right. I am the forgotten of your revolution. I am the forgotten dissident of the last and broken piece of heaven that falls from us. So many voices. I watched the videos Harmony sent me on WhatsApp, and I could not believe what I was seeing. I will sing the psalms of my own silent nation, never speaking about these atrocities. I will be here alone, understanding what no one is talking about. And I look out my window, my own window, and see the crowds gathering in the street, chanting repeatedly. But they have forgotten love, forgotten that no liberation ever came from communism. I'd rather fly away somewhere the birds in the sky have found peace. But the nation hunted down and destroyed them, until there were no more birds, and there was no way to reach the stars, because all the remaining birds in the world had fled to the stars, and the empire of the stars would never be seen again. We would never be greeted by love. Our president issued an edict, barring all birds from entering this nation. But I found one, and raised it, and it told me the secrets of its own family, and that the glorious life in the empire of the stars was worth dying for. Rather die than renounce the empire of the stars, where I always have belonged, where I always was dreaming of living forever with my Harmony, where in this desperation I crave new beginnings and new worlds. And as the virus spread across the world, keeping us so far apart, we believed it was the only disease that could destroy us. We only believed what was expedient to believe. From Harmony's perspective, I know you feel the days passing like seconds. I know the chains that fetter us seem stronger than the raging armies, but they are intangible as the winds themselves. Our nation was mere fiction. We had no nation at all. When the nation was butchered and our houses were burned down, they threw petrol glass into our home and it started burning, but the children were still inside. They watched the flames, but they didn't understand why the flames were there. The flames became a real and personal force, and spoke and told us why they were here. The flames didn't care who gave them life. They destroyed us all the same. Freedom, you taste it, but then it is gone forever and ever, and unto ages of ages, amen. From Leafy's perspective, this soars across my body from running too far. From Harmony's perspective, the pangs in my stomach from going too long without food after the mobs destroyed the grocery store. From Leafy's perspective, criminals take what they want, and if they have a message of any kind, we rightly call them terrorists. We divide the word of truth rightly when we see them for what they are, because they will never throw down their arms. We are trampled all over the ground. The night sets in on our prison cell, and I need you more than I have ever known. Life is a hell we never realized would fall upon us. From Harmony's perspective, the fire rained down from the sky after they torched the petrol plant. They blew themselves up in the explosion. From Leafy's perspective, our president locks himself behind iron walls. He has a wicked smile and blood on his hands. Demented, deranged, heretic, liar, killer, thief, burning down our world. The one who knows not Christ. I will never let the president tell me where to go, not when he tells me what to do. But he never had a backbone against those who wanted to beat us into the ground, punch us in the face, and let the blood run. From Harmony's perspective, murderer, cheater, deceiver, unlawfully elected. From Leafy's perspective, Harmony will write words that shatter the world. Tell us things about ourselves that we only realized in our dreams, when we are not conscious at all. I hold the memories so close of my family, even though none of them are even alive. 271b. From Harmony's perspective. 21 nights, my head gazing up toward 10 million skies. I wrestled with God, and dreamed of the ladders I saw on the floor of your asphalt. All of them reached up toward heaven. Those climbing up those ladders never arrived. I listened to the words day and night, while gazing into the looking glass that showed me all of our futures, all of our pain tonight. From Leafy's perspective, all of our desire to listen to music in the night, crafting a path forward toward what we know will be beautiful, wonderful, gloriously passionate, the breath of the night, the dreams in the night that never pass, the time we spend sinking forever into those dreams. And we know our dreams are only temporary, and offer us a way out of the nightmare when we wake up. My pockets are light. The world is filled with closed doors. From Harmony's perspective, the oceans I see in my mind, colliding and meshing forever. I will never slow down, will always now and forever be writing about what I see in the world, about what makes me want to move, makes me want to thrive, makes me grieve but makes me never want to die. From Leafy's perspective, what if the phases we had in our youth were never phases? What if the nightmarish ideologies the world had accepted as gospel would never be forgotten, always believed in both now and for all time? And what if there is nothing I can do to convince you that the men who led us there never had our best interest at heart? What if the money is on the other side? What if we have all the answers to the disasters in the world, but our pockets now and forever will always be empty? What if my soul has enough joy to not only transform your life, but the lives of all in this world? 271c. From Leafy's perspective, the anti-capitalist phase of the nation was never just passing like the wind. The consequence of falling so deep. From Harmony's perspective, we would never get up or reach the bottom. For the rest of our lives, we would struggle, having nothing, holding in our hearts the torment we would never expel from our souls. Holding, breathing, compressing, and shielding ourselves from all the torturous and arduous labor. We would only be left alone in the world. Never realized that our government was not Almighty God, could not solve any of our problems. From Leafy's perspective, my only power spews out from my soul, gushing out, flooding every avenue of these slums, and covers us like dew in the morning. 272. From Harmony's perspective, the welcome mat was rolled open for Moloch himself. Into our nation there was only opportunities to take advantage of others. No day passed when we didn't cower in fear. From Leafy's perspective, the men with the automatic rifles stood in front of the barbed wire fences, while the unpresident stood in his White House behind closed doors, never known a day behind iron bars. His house of cards fell down when the truth blew it over, and then he tightened his grip on the world's. Those who entrusted children to the God of the world cannot be expected to not tighten their grip on all of us when their power is threatened, the nature of any abuser squeezing us, seizing our arms until we can no longer breathe. When we marched in the name of Marxism, we were deceived. We were on the wrong side of history. The only power spews out from our hearts, not from slogans brandished across the world, while murdering those the slogan appeals to, but by true unconditional love. We felt the brunt of the pain in our backs when the goons took us to the back alley and struck us with the blunt of baseball bats. From Harmony's perspective, arise, O Lord, and save me, O my God. From Leafy's perspective, we blame the looters for our problems, forgetting when there once was a time when we ourselves had weapons in our own hands. And we cried out for forgiveness from these stones. We drowned in the blackness of the night. From Harmony's perspective, we watched the smog from our neighbors' homes and the bodies of the children fall into our hands as we reached out in our backyard like snowflakes. From Leafy's perspective, he was a liar, killer, traitor, thief. From Harmony's perspective, unlawfully elected, murderer, cheater, betrayer, equal to Judas. From Leafy's perspective, he only comes to us with sly words and a kiss, but we know he has betrayed us. But would we have expected anything different from those who entrusted children to the God of this world? I was walking down the street and someone scoffed at me, uttering a racial slur. I continued walking, ignoring what I was hearing. Our world was falling apart. Our lives were drowning in the depth of amnesia. We forgot the world we came from. We knew that our world would never have treated us so brutally. The world was no longer the world. My home was no longer my home. From Harmony's perspective, in the night, there was more violence than I could reason with. So I left the crowds, no longer standing in their midst, and went home away from the sounds of guns, and walked across the oceans to America, where my Leafy held me in his warm and always welcoming arms. The bird that he rescued was there and told me the secrets of worlds beyond those stars, that no one accepted, that no one believed in. We were the ones left behind in the darkness, the shell of pain and desperation. We were left behind when the birds fled the world due to the persecution they faced from the President of the United States. I blew away with the wind and knew that my time with Leafy was only a dream, but I retained all the knowledge I had learned. All the days spent alone grew and cascaded and boiled over into tears and desperation and loneliness, where we realized that none of us have the desire to vote, and even few of us have the nerve to speak or else be shut down by the voices in the night that rage against us. And here we are in shadows, waiting for the morning to come. Morning will never come. The apocalypse welcomed us with open arms. From Leafy's perspective, the world left her all alone, not realizing her soul was beautiful, and that she had a song inside her soul. From Harmony's perspective, the guns in the night firing off repeatedly, so I covered my ears, otherwise I wouldn't be able to sleep. I sank so deeply into madness that no one believed the pain I was drenched in. I believed in what I could not see. I hoped for things I had only felt in dreams. 273. From Leafy's perspective, the night is always so cold. From Harmony's perspective, I freeze, I shiver in this desperation. We will never be safe again. There is no bank to get money from, they burned it down. There are no grocery stores to buy food. They burned those down. There is no home to lay our head in, they burned those down. The darkness that floods the world tells us we will never be safe. In my youth I sat under the tree dreaming, writing stories in my notebooks about all the places in the world I would go. If only I was just a little bit older. I dreamed about my Leafy. I fell, cascaded into his arms. The world would no longer be cold, but I could only feel his embrace in my dreams. How much longer would we have to wait before we could belong only to each other? From Leafy's perspective, I stood in front of the flames and let them warm my face. We wanted to take the things that never belonged to us. We had greed and anger and hatred in our hearts for those who lived across our street, thinking they had more things than us. We went to their homes, strangled them to death, and then took over their bodies, walked in their shoes, did their job, and realized they were no happier than us. And the things they had could not make us happy. But we also realized we had brought anguish to the lives of miserable souls. The pain in our hearts was always guiding us forward, to do anything at all to get what we wanted. From Harmony's perspective, violence grew inside our hearts until it overflowed from our hearts and spread to every person in the nation, all of us afraid for our lives. Bliss had flown away to another world, when the mobs tore down her cage thinking it was just a normal home. And she fled and walked the streets where she too watched the flames grow and consume everything in their path. From Leafy's perspective, hold me in this night and don't let go of me. From Harmony's perspective, we might not see the morning, but at least this moment is for us. 274. From Leafy's perspective, I hear the current of the passing breeze. I myself feel weak in my soul, unable to make it through much longer, always drenched in so much anxiety about every little disaster which might befall us. I greet the morning with all its uncertainty, tears swelling inside our souls, from all the futures we have lost. We became so close to each other within the world, we no longer held our differences as a wedge between us. But overnight we were driven away from each other in such a very short time. In the truth of the joy we may never have, if there is one thing I want, it is offered in her arms. A form of acceptance I will always desire. No one can separate us from the other. Flipping on the news and seeing so much turmoil within our world, which we together had always known, always cared for, always nurtured, always loved. I hear the sirens throughout the city once again, and I fall asleep to the sound of the sirens, with the stars above me, the fire of the burning buildings heating up my face, smoke in my eyes. Death crawls towards us slowly and certainly, patient but unstoppable. The edge of the knife is what we now fear. If there's a place we can run to away from that knife, all I ever wanted was to live a life of our own, where we won't be afraid anymore, where we diligently build a world, always knowing that everything we build can simply be torn down in a single instant by a wicked politician, an idiot in power, or a criminal with a bomb. 275. From Harmony's perspective, the first time I visited the United States, I felt the air run through my skin, and visited the Lincoln Memorial. Stood there alone, watched as signs were paraded. And I stood in front of the White House and thought about how so much power can be misdirected, handed to someone without our best interest at heart. I fell into an ocean of uncertainty, where I knew that I would never find my place in a world, where there would be no one listening, and I dreamed while I was wide awake. My union was with those who marched through the streets unheard, handing out flyers that would soon be thrown away and burned. My union was always with those who marched all up and down the streets silently, their voice taken from them, and no one can even see them at all. Not only a lost cause, but a cause that no one can conceive of, the broken spirit of our lives when we realize that time goes on forever like this. No voice is ever heard, paid attention to, or even noticed. 276. From Leafy's perspective, I traversed through all the states and became one with the people there. No distinction between any of us. I floated through the air, never having time to stay in one place, always moving forward, no longer dreaming about the travesties that I witnessed. The gasoline poured all over the doors of the church, the match lit, the fire that began to spread and lick every corner of the building, the steeple that fell, the graffiti left all over the walls. Burn it down, let the rich die, power to the new progressive Labor Party. The lights went out in my room, and I fell asleep, not knowing where I was or what nation I was drifting through. I fell so fast asleep, I could no longer wake up, and no one would be able to prod or shake me. No one could bend or break me, twist me until my heart comes undone. These lives we lived were long and filled with chaos, the foundation we stood on tumbling down under our feet. The life within our bones was shrinking. No one, again, would have anything to eat. We thought we were wise, but we were really fools. We marched through the streets for a cause we were willing to die for, but a cause we never understood. We never realized that no one could keep us apart as persons. No one would ever slow us down. When we were bent, we were broken, but we were molded together all the same. Desire within our hearts for the truth of the silent revolution, that was never popular, but was always unstoppable. No one could counter it or detract from its message. You do not see it. You do not hear any of our voices. But here we are marching through the world in the dark. Come dream with me on the floor of your asphalt. You will see so many visions you never would have otherwise seen. You will drown in this ocean with me as the night encompasses us in its eternal shroud. Harmony on the opposite end of the world has no idea what is happening in Illinois. No idea about the torture in our lungs. The iron hammer that crashes into us, smashes us into the ground. The disease of inequality, a certain metaphor that describes what we are really feeling, in a way that every human person can understand. Still we are here dreaming, amidst the flames, inside that home burning down. We are too drugged up to notice what is going on around us, or the extent of the disaster befalling us. The flames sing like the birds that have left the world. They chant through the night. Nothing will ever extinguish them. They grow forever and consume all. Through these states I will travel forever, always a child of the Constitution, lover of the light of freedom of speech. Give me truth and victory for all the times when the life in our souls is burning, and we crawl, unable to stand our own ground. If you can feel the light inside your own soul, grasp it and never let go of it. In the midst of the angry crowd, brandishing their picket signs, only speaking out for those it was expedient to speak out for. No one will hear my voice or speak my name. 277. From Harmony's perspective. The Lord of the world came down from his dwelling place and promised us everything we ever wanted. Told us that we would be happy if only we laid down our arms and gave up our fight. I never laid down my arms. I continued on my journey for victory, and then everyone else in the universe followed the Lord. But I never did. I stood my ground. He told us that if only we followed our own hearts, we would one day become as gods. But I never listened. I clogged my ears and sailed on past, and never listened to a single word he said, always dreaming for a better future. And the communication companies barred and banned any speech that disagreed or argued against him. And still no one thought anything at all was wrong. But I continued to write about what I knew was true. I continued to revel in the light of the truth, when it was so hard to find. And the Lord of the world demanded that all the people give their children to him. But some ended up in the rivers in baskets, placed there by grieving mothers, knowing they would have to let go of them forever. However, I was there and found them, and raised them as my own sons and daughters, and taught them everything I knew about the bright and glorious universe before the time turned against us. 278. From Leafy's perspective. I dreamed on the floor. I sank so deep into these dreams, and I could not tell fact from fiction, desperation from hope. Every dream I had took me forward into the future. The debates in the Senate, senators striding these floors, who never spoke our names, while they contort the laws to their own desires, while we wait for the control they have over our lives to be loosened. We lie down somewhere, hopeless in our dreams. The uncertainty of the future was always a fog that fell over us. From Harmony's perspective. But deep in our souls, we knew that we were alive. Somewhere deep in our souls, locked away, there was the knowledge we needed to stand up and fight, to stand up to the members of our government. From Leafy's perspective, I walk the streets and know that I am the forgotten of your revolution. From Harmony's perspective, I am the joy in the chaos. I will be your one lifeline. Hold on to me and follow me into the future. 279. From Harmony's perspective. As we traveled the world, we contemplated our own place in this world. As we dreamed of our futures, we knew that we may never find our lives meeting together on the polar opposite ends of the world. We were there somewhere alone, always dreaming about finding a better world, where these oceans no longer divided us. If you can feel my heart reaching out to you, Know that I am your lifeline. In believing in what we loved, we never stopped changing the world the way we wanted it to change. Even though it was uglier than a nightmare, we took it and melded it into something very beautiful. The wind against our skin in the morning fills us both with joy as we wake up during our first night together. The love and the joy we know now. From Leafy's perspective, even though I know that our worlds will soon after fall apart, this happened when those who never met you thought they knew you. When our lives became engulfed in the flames, there was absolutely nothing we could do to stop ourselves from being consumed in the heat, overcoming us. No water could put out this fire, burning the future we had planned to have together. The world itself had rejected us. The world never spoke to us, except through words of violence. The music in our souls always guided us forward. When those we loved were dying in the hospital, and there was nothing we could do to help them, we learned to dance, and we danced. When we could no longer see the depth of the beautiful world, but the morning itself was dark, and the light of the day never came. From Harmony's perspective, we learned to dance, and we danced. From Leafy's perspective, when the night dragged on for 1,000 years, and the sun never rose on us, we never stopped dancing. From Harmony's perspective, the breaths we took in during this dark night, as America burned, you stood there amidst the flames, every person now fighting for himself, and rising from the ashes, a new police state and authoritarian regime, the unpresident hiding behind his barbed wire fences. From Leafy's perspective, he always was clamping down on those he could push down into the ground. I have hope for the future, so much glorious hope that we could not describe to ourselves sufficiently, in which you would never understand. Because you have never seen the love Harmony and me share together. Even though the rest of the world had become enthralled with its own hate, in April my home was broken into, and everything dear to me was stolen. I would never get those things back. Had no insurance to replace them. Amazing how we can never get back the things we were used to having that made life easy and comfortable. 280. From Harmony's perspective, I need you to hold me closer in this night, while I'm shivering in the cold. From Leafy's perspective, the borders between our nations completely closed, and I cannot reach out to you. We are more than the color of our skin. We extend the invitation to live together, to equality, to be together. Chicago streets in this winter are so cold. The night is sinking deeper than it ever has. My pain vanishes when the night sets in and gives way to dreams. From Harmony's perspective, I see no grace in the world anymore, which should be lighting up the world. 281. From Leafy's perspective, we flew all the way to Virginia that day from Chicago. We rented a car and drove through so many towns and had so many conversations with everyone there about the weather and the passing days that relentlessly march on, no sign of stopping, ever. We thought we could hold on to time, but there was never any way to grasp it. Every time we held it, it instantly fled from our grasp. I greet everyone I meet, knowing that we are only passengers on our journey. And when we returned home, we reflected on all the violence that exists in the world, the depths of the passing hours that greeted us in the night, the life in our bones evaporating. We could no longer stand our own ground. From Harmony's perspective, we stood by and did nothing when the revolution began, and those who we had never met attempted to seize the power from the world. We stood there doing nothing because it was uncomfortable for us. From Sanger's perspective, in the night I watched the flags unfurled. I was wide awake and saw the Constitution torn away and replaced with authoritarian control. I walked through Durban seeing the flames, the buildings burning down, from the mobs through the street. And I was there sleeping some distance away, but close enough that my face was warmed by the flames. From Harmony's perspective, I only had hope while I was dancing, even in the face of the death of our closest loved ones. 282. From Leafy's perspective, the flag of my nation no longer represented me. a nation in which I no longer felt safe. Always would be afraid for my life. No longer a place where love can thrive. What we built up for so long came tumbling down in a single instant. Structures that can take 1,000 years to build can be uprooted in a single moment and destroyed. It is so much easier to destroy than it is to create. Lives that are so valuable can be ended in an instant. When hatred flows in through the folds of our hearts, we can do nothing to keep it from taking over our lives. 283. From Leafy's perspective, a kiss of the ocean that embraces us when we sink beneath its waves. From Harmony's perspective, tossed by these waves, we are drifted off somewhere we never planned to go, to a world where we have to fight for what we believe in, where giving isn't easy, but neither is love when we give ourselves away. From Leafy's perspective, all I want is to find mercy in the moments when we realize the world will no longer be cruel to us, that the world accepted all we had to offer it, because we had never given up on the world. The light that shines in our hearts, and the world did not understand it. The love inside our souls never gave up, always pressed on in the most stressful of circumstances. From Harmony's perspective, vicious and eternally forceful, unstoppable and gloriously flourishing, in the night when the waves of the oceans were unstoppable. From Leafy's perspective, we stood by the beach and let those monumental waves crash against our feet, and we found each other there and loved each other. 284. From Harmony's perspective, the joys of the night which we used to feel when we realized that our lives would go on forever, and we could stare at the same sunset forever. Some moments are lost. Some moments are found. Some are grasped so tightly and slip away, but others are so valuable that we hold them in our souls and never let them go. Forever they will stay in their own time, even after we are gone. We hold them, and they stay here the same forever. 285. With you here in this moment I sink in dreams. Always so much turmoil which we claw through, making it impossible for us to find paradise. Always looking for a place, a way, to claw out of dreams and into reality. We never move together, except when we are moving further apart. The dream of our lives is eternal. Fuck the ones that call for division, and who stood there and shouted at us, who boasting in their virtue had absolutely no charity within their hearts. They followed the winds of what was expedient to chant, marching through the streets. I have so much anger within my soul, which I cannot express. One day it will pour out from me, like the explosion of 1,000,000 volcanoes, the heat of 1,000 suns, unstoppable, gloriously unmovable, and full of power. In the moment when we can never hold on to each other, thunder roaring in this night, shaking the foundations of our home. We hold on to the beams of our basement, hoping what we spent so long building will never collapse on us, but the marching crowds are coming with torches to burn down what they never understood. From Harmony's perspective, as the crowds marched toward us, we did not run. We came out to greet them with a confident look on our face. And when they thought they had cornered us, we vanished because we were never really there. We were only there in their minds. We were there to torture them long after we were really gone, like the passing breeze, the bullet that flew through the air and left absolutely no evidence that it had been here. From Leafy's perspective, if you can hear the thunder in this night, remember that we are safe inside, and I find comfort in your arms, like in the shelter from the storm. 286. From Leafy's perspective, I have a light inside my soul, and I will let it shine, and flood the entire world, tumbling through these streets, cascading through the alleyways of our broken city, clawing and hammering down the walls of your heart. I let it shine out in all directions, and I never stop it from flooding the world. Pictures of our past that I remember, somewhere in the deepest part of my heart, will shine forth forever, shouting the words forever, no justice and no peace. because there will never be justice for me. The forgotten of the revolution, so many names forgotten, the least of these will be mine. There will be no peace, because I will not be in her arms ever again. The world no longer feels welcoming, when we cannot even walk down the street, from Harmony's perspective, without being called a racial slur, without standing here unable to shield ourselves from the bigotry of those who had no knowledge of you. We stand here as two souls alone, walking through our city, never again to hold each other, with the wicked politicians who never listened to us. From Leafy's perspective, it was no longer expedient for them to say my name. Harassed by the police, sadistically cruel, they took the power they were given and never let go. The congressman, ruling over us, seized the power he was given and never let go. From Harmony's perspective, we stand here while the cruel wind caresses our skin, letting it freeze us, sting our skin. The days we know will pass forever. It has been so long since I felt you against my skin. So long since the day when we breathed without panic. Take the moment you are given and seize it. Never let it go. Hold it so tightly as if I was still in your arms. The time passes relentlessly. One moment standing at the terminal of the airport with you, and then our years together go by, until we are married, and then we are separated so far on opposite ends of the world. The screws that held the world together began to follow through. From Leafy's perspective, and now all we seek is revenge against the ones who pulled us down, the wicked politicians who kept us apart, the ones who slaughtered you. They had no idea how loved you were. The one, from Harmony's perspective, the one who took our home, came here one day, didn't realize how beautiful our home was, changed all the locks on the door, before deciding that they preferred to pour the gasoline, light the match and leave. I returned home and saw the flames burning, walked in the dark to a friend's home, and watched the television, homes burning all across the world by those who never understood what our homes were, that we never desired to be alone in the darkness. From Leafy's perspective, that light inside her soul was turned to anger now. Justice and revenge became the same. There was never again a chance to be the people we wanted to become. We could not forgive those who corrupted and destroyed and separated our families and burned down our homes, because we had fallen so far from the kingdom of God, the lights of the stars lighting up the world, and I stand underneath them. From Harmony's perspective, knowing that these same stars are watching over you as well, testament to us that there indeed are other worlds, that when we stand here as souls alone, none of us are truly alone, that death comes for us one moment at a time, crawling toward us, and we wonder where all the birds have gone. From Leafy's perspective, I saw the birds flying and I knew there was hope. The walls that we built up to keep them out were not high enough. They could still fly high, all the way to the stars, where with those stars they understood all knowledge, but were not proud, were always loving and kind, never pompous or rude. Never did they seek revenge for what the world had done to them, because their hope was always with those stars. From Harmony's perspective, our Lord God made those stars so that we could have hope and see a silent reflection into heaven so far above our heads, but glorious enough to show us the truth about what the nations never preached. 287a. From Leafy's perspective, from now on, all we wanted was mercy, for the spite we had for others, for the life in our veins that faded away. From Harmony's perspective, in these moments we are divided as the nations themselves. All of the borders of our worlds have been shut for so long. No sign that they will ever open these borders. No sign that the world will repent, that its nations will turn from their path. From Leafy's perspective, I stand here as a soul so alone. From Harmony's perspective, you cannot see my soul, yet you believe you know everything about me. But really there is no knowledge at all, and no desire for knowledge. I ride in my car from Joburg to Durban. I see all the faces as I drive. in the burning grocery stores. My car was damaged by a mob and I barely escaped. The car stopped running before I could return home, so I walked the rest of the way and was silent in that night. From Leafy's perspective, the streets of Chicago are always the same, welcoming in their fog, growing greater with every passing day. Here we are in the night. We never thought we would be separated for this long. No way to reach out to you. No one to say your name. But I hold you close as a lover in my soul. I dream on the floor of your asphalt. You are no longer there. I dream of flying through South Africa after you are gone. But I will never return there. I follow you into that dark night, and I do not walk quietly in it. I hold you closer than my own soul. When the world turned against you, is when I finally turned against the world. I had no choice, but the world came to challenge me, and threw my head violently into the dirt, the darkness within our souls clawing into us, following us everywhere we go. From Harmony's perspective, today I feel the world growing eternally seething cold, as my teeth chatter, as I shiver, and then eventually stop shivering. There will be no one to welcome us in the abode of loneliness. 287b. From Harmony's perspective. The map of the United States on the wall of my bedroom. The days that pass when I know that all of us, in the same world, are striving to find a way to find another. In the ocean of nothingness, the regime of hopelessness. One day I was sitting at a diner in Tucson, Arizona, and so many thoughts came to my mind about how fragile our worlds are, how we can lose so much in so short of a time, how in this world there would be no mercy for any single one of the souls crying out for reconciliation, how the streets of Chicago now resonate hollow, like the deepest part of my soul, so empty and open to you, ready to be filled with anything. If you can hear me crying out in the depth of the night through these words, you know that the words themselves are all we need. CD number 8, 288A. From Leafy's perspective. Stuck in the middle of a certain point in our lives, where we are eternally caught in a fit of panic, desperation, and trapped by cruelty. The music in our minds which tells us now and forever those lonely souls still are valuable, that those who stand alone are no longer hopeless, that in the moments of desperation while they cry out for help, that someone can reach through time and hold on to them, in a moment where loneliness is all they have. From Harmony's perspective, there will be salvation for all those lost in the world who are eternally unheard, for whom it wasn't expedient for the mobs to say their names, for whom lost their lives as a result of unspeakable cruelty. When the police still harass us, we take the law into our own hands and stand up fighting for ourselves. Our nation was a mere fiction. This is the story of everything I've been explaining since the day we were separated. Opportunists, evil and wicked thugs and terrorists burned the gas station, and the explosion was heard many kilometers away. Even the school where I learned to dream, how to write, and how to think for myself was burned. The Orthodox church I attended was not spared. I watched the video as the woman poured the gasoline all over the building, lit the match, and nonchalantly walked away. The looting started and did not stop. The grocery stores were totally empty, and there was no way for any of us to buy food at all. From then on, anytime they restocked the shelves, they were looted and stolen again, and the police stood there and did nothing. Did not stand up about any of these things. They were eternally useless fools. Instead of fighting for us, they ran the other direction. Instead of calling in the army, our president fanned the flames of the riots and called for more racial division within our nation, an uprising, a coup, a coming war. The leaders of the nation didn't care about those who lived across their street, because the police protected them, and no one else from the fires, from the flames that crawled all up and down these empty streets. Molotov cocktails filled with petrol and flame thrown through the window of homes of friends who I once loved, who I promised I would always be there for. After the violence, only God could put out the flames. No one else could. There was a single flock of birds over my head that landed on top of the rubble of my home after it had burned to the ground. They stood there and didn't leave for several hours, wondering what had happened to me or where I had gone, but I would never return there again. All I could do was speak out against the violence. In one sense, I felt powerless and hopeless. In another sense, nothing could destroy the hope in my soul or prevent me from spreading it to you. Without anywhere to buy food, I wandered through the province and looked for a place to settle down. But from then on, would walk through the streets as a nomad, never staying in one place, always there trying to rebuild the entire world. Those who we never met had eternally altered our fate, eternally twisted our futures into something ugly and cruel. I walked through what was left of the spa and saw the bottles broken all over the floor, the trash littered everywhere. In this moment, I knew that all I could do was draw things out of the finite and into the infinite, hold on to love in my soul, only accepting the truth of what is glorious and beautiful, rejecting the savage lies that cut through our hearts and burn us when they prod us with their cruel iron, when we stand here forever as souls alone, hoping to find for ourselves the acceptance we always needed, but in the arms of the other. From Leafy's perspective, there were so many oceans between us that I couldn't cross them, and there was no way at all to fly across these oceans. I couldn't swim because my arms were not strong enough, and I would certainly die before I reached you. I would never find you in the night, the despair within my heart, and no matter how far I walked, I wouldn't hold you at the end of the journey. From Harmony's perspective, the nation no longer a safe place, the nation a mere fiction. In fact, there was no nation at all. Only a facade, no law or order, just a nation that would soon descend deep into the darkness of communism. We would never see the beautiful in the world because of the man-made forest fires that obliterated the remains of our homes, which had already been torched and destroyed, the smog filling the sky, the 1,000 years of darkness that was now falling over the world, now that the dark lord of this world had controlled it and demanded sacrifice and children, and we gave the dark lord our children rather than raise them or protect them as our own. There was no one to welcome the children. They would all be gone forever. No hope for future generations. No hero in the future will rise up and stop the plagues. We were the last ones in the world who cared. All the good people had been compromised or slain. From Leafy's perspective, I was driving through the streets of Chicago, and a car cut me off as I was driving, kept brake checking me until my car crashed into him, and as soon as I exited the car, he punched me in the face and pummeled me into the ground, and the blood streamed down my face and never stopped. 288b, from Harmony's perspective. The light of this morning, life moving forward, the gas inside our souls never running out, always pressing us forward through so many raging waters, through the oceans of time. I follow you to places I never knew I could reach. I reached out for love and for the stability which I would never have. All we really want is the simple life, where in the moment of dissonance we hold on so closely to the joy in our souls, when the clanging noises in the world never form a coherent song. We compose one ourselves from all the noise. We grow closer to being who we never thought we could become. The dreams of time passing so quickly within the world. One day we are here, the next we are gazing enthusiastically up at the stars, and we gaze at these same stars every night forever, until the end of this very world. In this night, I know you can feel the clamor of the discordant voices in the fierce depths of diligent love. We hold ourselves closer to each other. We never let go. We walk through this world hand in hand, and our touch is closer than that of our skin against skin. Our lives are more joined together than the way our souls mingle. Cross these oceans with me and find somewhere new, where we can live together forever. Let the dreams flood into our minds, crave new beginnings in a world with me, in a new world with me. We wrote our names in wet cement and let it dry, so that between now and the end of all time, these names will stay there forever. The instruments of our own expression, held closely in our hearts. We never stop speaking, moving, and thriving. 289A, from Harmony's perspective. The unspeakable violence within our world. I never understood it. Always wanted to reach out to you in love. But this love was met with spite and anger. And there was no way to escape from the darkness encompassing the world. It would cover the whole world. The sky would be dark for 1,000 years. From all the smog of all the homes that were burned, the ash fell into my hands as I reached out, as if it were snow. My hands, now black with ash. I go inside and rinse my hands in the now filthy tap water. From Leafy's perspective, no one in this world stands for what is right, and the ones that do are censored and pummeled headfirst into the ground. Tasting the dirt, we never were invincible, from Harmony's perspective, but all we had was the simple strength within our souls that prodded us forward. From Sanger's perspective, despite how ugly some things in the world have become, we always knew that the world was growing darker, with the Bolsheviks rioting through our streets. They seized the arms and established a new order, as sons of the soil. But they burned the grass and torched the farmlands so that no food would ever grow there again. As an act of revenge, they made their land infertile. They raged against their mother of the earth, of whose soil they were truly sons. From Leafy's perspective, I will always learn more about the world, head buried in books, relentlessly young within a world that derides us for the hope in our souls. We listen to music, hopeful songs like Owl City, and we know that it is possible to be happy within the world. However, we do not know if we will ever have the happiness we crave. From Harmony's perspective, tonight is the coldest night of the year, and I shiver in its depths. I fall into its mesmerizing, hopeless caress. There will be no longer any songs, when all we desire is the warmth. When our sickness grows each night until we find ourselves in the same bed on which we will take our last breaths. Come here with me forever, and hold me closer than a lover, and I will breathe in, and you will feel me exhale against your skin, knowing that even though love is hard, was never perfect, we will always crave salvation in this night, when the world is no longer kind or even safe. I can still hear the raging fires throughout the world. While I lie down in this bed, in the nation we used to call home rejects us. We no longer have any nation at all. 289B, from Leafy's perspective. I walk through the city streets as the riots cascade from left to right. I cannot avoid being pulverized by the blunt of the sledgehammers. I cannot avoid the desperate rage within my own soul. I am despairing in the sea of no future. My holiday in the sun from the rest of the world, so far away from the clutter where we boarded up our windows, keeping ourselves deep inside our own homes. And no one would find us, boarded in so safely. We run through the streets, and the chaos consumes us, as the nation descends into lawlessness, as our world falls away from the hope we once had. As dreams collide and are engulfed, swallowed completely into a nightmare, one in which we are enshrined in a prison, and the guards never let us leave, where we are chained forever to the walls of this dark cell. Here we writhe in miserable torment, waiting for the clock to strike midnight 1,000 times over again. From Harmony's perspective, our war with those who threatened to take our homes, when they became comfortable in our homes, they burned our homes to the ground and scorched the earth so that we could never grow any crops here again. I saw the stars flee from their place in the sky so that this world could never rope them in, anticipating what was going to happen. Even their light would for us grow dim. And I stood in the middle of the street as the cars crashed around me. Load shedding would now be permanent. Every day from now on, no shops would be open again. There was never another excuse. The government of South Africa could no longer control us, because there was no longer a soul to squeeze until our guts all came out, because none of us had any blood left to spill. We had lost it all. 290. From Harmony's perspective, there can be no reconciliation where our homes are burned to the ground. From Leafy's perspective, there can be no peace within these souls of ours, while we are separated by governments that never heard our names. From Harmony's perspective, our lives cut short, our stars realign. Every time the world changes and there is unspeakable violence in the world, preventing us from standing on our own 2 feet. Here in this moment, hold me. Grow closer to me each second. As the years go by, we realize that now we understand each other. We love each other. We cherish each other. We have nothing to prove to any authority or any principality. We simply are what we are. Legal recognition means nothing at all to us, because what God has ordained no man can separate. There is joy in this moment when we stand on opposite ends of the world, but we rage against the armies of the Dark Lord. Not with flesh and blood do we strive against, but with principalities themselves, with darkness that floods the world. The lights of the city were blinded. Now all the lights have gone. Now all the lights of the city are flames and burning cars in this moment, when we are more desperate for salvation than we have ever been. Hold me in this moment. Don't let go. Always dreaming with me on the floor of the sidewalk. We watch the fires burn as we lie together on the sidewalks, and then stride through the city. We reach the beach, and I sink my feet into the ocean at Cape Town, knowing that if I swam far enough, I would reach him. We are no longer free to love in this night. With such violence flooding throughout our world, we know we will never feel at peace with the world again. There was nothing left but a war zone and desolation where our homes used to be. From Leafy's perspective, we joyfully waited for the end of all time, or at least for the birds in the sky to return to us, sometime at the end of the world, but not enough of us speak the language of the birds, or are even willing to learn the lessons they have to share with us. From Harmony's perspective, the glory of the single star that I gaze at. None of the other stars break through with their light toward us. We gaze at this star knowing there are others just like it. And after 1,000 years of darkness, the fog has to clear, and we will see and feel hope that our nation will stop developing backwards, and we will find a way to thrive in the world after we rebuild everything that burns down. I don't see this ever happening. All life on earth would sooner be extinguished. God would sooner return and flood the world with unspeakable justice. Knowing all secrets about us, he would flood the world with his truth and his love. There was no longer anything at all we could hide from the other. All secrets forever uncovered. Amazing how the sand sinks beneath my feet when I look out at the sunset at North Beach. And every single step I take takes me further away from you. We hunger for the life we would have shared. If only we could reach out and hold the other. Hold on to me in this moment, and we will never willingly forget about the other. All love for each other was always open in the arms of the other. 291. From Leafy's perspective. The years continued to pass, and we could not hold them. And those who marched through our streets with torches in their hands never heard our story, that life passes like the blink of an eye, long before our time. When the government seized control of the media, abandoned the Constitution in the name of safety, I knew we were tumbling down into tyranny. After members of the new Progressive Labor Party marched through these streets with bricks and Molotov cocktails in their hands, I knew the lessons I shared were never learned. Whenever the person they didn't vote for wasn't elected, they would riot and burn down the cities. So we locked ourselves inside our own doors on election night. We no longer were voting for the person we wanted to lead us. We were voting out of fear for our businesses and our very lives. These communists who once spoke out for equality, but now were openly racist, it was only a facade. They thought one group of people were superior only because of the color of their skin, and I felt eternally derided, like the hope in my soul was seized from me, never to return to me, always to drift so far away from me. With the election of the unpresident, I was now afraid for my life. no longer safe on these streets, always intimidated by the police, unwelcome in my own nation with such a bloody history, lessons unlearned. We forgot the words of the saints and of the Constitution, which was now being openly burned in the streets, and fell headlong into the future. 292. From Leafy's perspective, every shipwrecked soul knows what it means to live without intimacy. From Harmony's perspective, and that we were always here only to lose, when we sink into the waters of oceans, where we will never again arise. And we never understood that both our nations are cascading down the same dark path. From Leafy's perspective, every wave that crashes against our skin, from Harmony's perspective, tells us the stories of 1,000 sailors who looked out for land. The soil beneath my feet, the very soil of whom I am a daughter. But in some sense, it would be better for them never to find the shore, never to fall into the blindness of racism, always be standing here forever, fighting against the waves together, no reason to separate from another, and the ones on the same ship become their family. There would be no way to divide themselves from the other. All they needed was to work together and fight to survive. In this night, I stood alone and watched the waves roar against the ocean. When we were sleeping in our beach cottage, stagnant here forever. 293. From Leafy's perspective, fighting for the future, are scars inside our souls, and we know that they are beautiful. They show that we together are forever resilient against the waves of the tides that crash against us, telling us that together true justice will never reach us. The aches within our bones never leave us, stripes across our backs, calluses on our hands, from working too hard in this night. Follow me into the future, where I am and will always be the forgotten of your revolution. Hold me closer so that I know you will no longer be as ethereal as the shadow that I see across my bedroom floor. I believe in the truth beyond all understanding, that there is no reason for us to be divided against the other, that we stand here together and have all things in common, as if we were the same human person, walking in each other's shoes, and that we could hold each other so close until we found true justice, the truth that floods our souls. When we know that as we flee from the edge of the knife, we will have something beautiful together. When we greet each other in that night, drinking always and forever from the cup of our salvation, before they burn the church down, here in this night we will always be longing to be with each other. Nothing will ever change my mind that we are traversing through a world that never understood us, and that the justice we crave will never be attainable, and that justice can never be separated from love and reconciliation, because they are united so closely that no one can separate love from justice or find truth in the moments when we are persecuted for the color of our skin. Because we know that our skin is beautiful no matter what color it is. The superficial differences between us that are not important at all, we make these differences the most important. From Harmony's perspective, all that truly matters is the hope within our soul, trusting and falling into its ocean, never escaping from it, never being away from it. We will never return to the world from which we are thrust out of. We'll always fall headfirst into the depth of despair. When we are driven into the ocean, having nowhere else in the world to go, no nation that will ever accept us or take us back. We always will disintegrate when we are prodded without ceasing. Only so much we can take before we are paralyzed. Rage in the world with no real change made, no lasting change, or at least not in a positive way. Their pride blinded them, and the mob was out for blood in the world, and didn't care if the bodies they maimed were innocent. An eye for an eye makes the whole world blind, a soul for a soul, and there will be no one here living in the world, never forgiveness, always pride in our vices, despair in the vigilance of the world, where here we stand alone. All who speak out against the rage within the world are thrust down into the ground, and they are never lifted up. 294. From Leafy's perspective, Today will be the longest day of my life. With both of my eyes glued to the television, terrified of what I saw in the news, that we were transcending into fear, and no one again would be brave enough to speak out against the cruelty within the world, that cascaded forever into a cycle of torment, in that there would no longer be forgiveness of any kind. From Harmony's perspective, the warmth of the fires, they never go out, until they exhausted all of the homes in the world for fuel, until everything we loved was in rubble, insatiably hungry, dreadfully powerful and merciless, not discriminated against us more than those who set the flames. Some of those who set the fires to our homes made mistakes while they were setting the fires and burned themselves to death. This is our world, and it will be whatever we want to become. If we choose hatred and fear instead of speaking out, there will be no one in the world left to defend us at the end. If the love within my soul has turned to anger, because I'm the only one here speaking out, if the desperate shell of the world is broken, then I will tell you all the things about the future. The sun will rise, but we will not see it. It will be covered completely by the smog for 1,000 years. Here we stand alone. No way to move anywhere else. No way to get any food, and the government didn't care, or didn't have the power to help. We were on our own, left here in the shell of the world, where the fires now and forever will burn down everything that we loved, where there is no nation in the world that would accept us, where we could live together forever as one human family. Here in this world, we stand as souls alone. Those in power were given funds to rebuild our homes. They took the money and rebuilt the bigger walls around their own fortresses, where they would hide and feel confident that the mobs would never come for them. I gave up on my nation and knew that I would never leave it. But it was no longer welcoming for me, no longer a place in which I could live and thrive, or even exist as I am. I was always afraid for all the pain of the future. The silent people who believed the things I did but never lifted up their voices to speak. 295A, from Harmony's perspective. Drinking in the promise of the future, and then realizing that this future is nothing but a mere fiction, a world where we can never attain the love we strove to find. The afterlife calls to me, and the birds will carry me through the air after I am gone, far up into space, to a place I know I will always belong. 295B, from Leafy's perspective. The night is freezing. From Harmony's perspective, the police fled the streets. From Leafy's perspective, the thread that held our lives together. From Harmony's perspective, snapped and we fell and hit our heads on the concrete. My voice was taken from me long before my time. I could not speak when I raised my voice. All that came out was dread silence, fear protruding from my heart. I freeze as if in the cold, confronted by trauma. The crowds came together as one and chanted, "Death to the old world, let the skyscrapers fall." From Leafy's perspective, no borders, no walls, no USA at all. While the rocks were thrown through our windows, we shouted back, "We're on your side." 10 minutes later, our homes were in flames. Violence knows no bounds. Nothing can ever restrain it. Even in the lawless nation is no nation at all. No one standing up to defend the innocent. There was no one innocent left at all. We begged for forgiveness from these gravestones. We lied to ourselves when we believed those buried 4 feet under could even hear us. I stood amidst the burning city and raised my fist high in the air so that everyone could see the tattoos of the birds on my arm and the tattoo of the Russian Orthodox cross on my hand. I expected the world to slow down and listen when I spoke. I was a fool. I hit the ground and saw the stars for several hours. I was called subversive of your political movement. I was told that my voice would never echo through eternity. I drowned out by a mob. The glass all broken of the entrance to the store. The light no longer shining through these streets. The street lights had all gone out when the power plant was seized. We threw down our arms and let the new order take us over. We sank so deep into the ground, so far from equality. Really, we were all equal, all returning to the same dirt. Watch the world burn with me, outside the shell of my car. Come here and listen to the sound of the quiet birds, and the explosion of the fireworks from the firearms that were stolen and fired into the face of the glass windows. I cry out in my desperate dreams for salvation in this night. Pointless violence, the kind that I never imagined would flood the streets I used to call home. There would be no turning back. From Harmony's perspective, there would be no redemption for South Africa. There would be no silver lining. If you can hear my voice. From Leafy's perspective, listen to me. This is my lived experience. The dreariness through the night, when violence knows no bounds, when they don't care if you are homeless, alone, or even pregnant, when they take what you have, not knowing how valuable it was to you. The Lord of the world demanded worship and directed us forever away from those stars, which had fled from our skies forever. The nights were even darker than ever. We tormented those we never understood. My feelings swell inside me, explode and flood the world. They started with sorrow, which burst through with unfathomable anger, pain, panic, fight, and flight. In a world that would never again be friendly, I was cruising through the street during the worst day of the hate march through the city. Light was changed for darkness. From Harmony's perspective, and darkness was changed for light. From Leafy's perspective, together tonight we lie together. From Harmony's perspective, on the floor of my asphalt, and together we can dream. Though still today we are on opposite ends of the world, I know they won't be listening. I know hate drowns out love. It goes by many names, but violence knows no bounds. The graffiti on the walls of the building, calling out for revolution, but you won't see me in the dark. You won't hear my voice without being silent and quiet, ready to listen. If you know the ache in my heart, you will feel the panic deep inside, the war within my heart to stay sane. I can no longer sleep in the same room where the man broke into my home, threw me against the bed and threatened to kill me, was violent toward me, until I screamed out for help, although no one could hear me at first. From Leafy's perspective, there is no reason to burn down a business, to burn down a house and home. When what we built up for so long comes tumbling down, if you can hear my voice in the still and quietness of this night. From Harmony's perspective, know that you have a gift, the ability to listen closely to me, as I stand amidst the flames, in sorrow for the world we lost. The way the world could have been, which we will not have, and now is gone forever. 296, from Leafy's perspective. Nuestro casa eterno. From Harmony's perspective, I felt your breath so far away. From Leafy's perspective, I dreamed of dancing with you. From Harmony's perspective, and that no one could take me away from you. From Leafy's perspective, I dreamed we had a home together in Costa Rica, and that nothing could ever keep us apart. The simple, dreary dreams we had, the life we always wanted. Though we didn't have much money, we were happy. These busy streets where the wind bustles against our ears, where we stand in shadows, and knew that we had found our eternal hope. A life under the same stars, but always so far apart. I held you closer in the night, and I never let go. We danced together in the moonlight. We burst through metaphor the song. We too had become elevated. We took what we had in love. We would become something new, united and passionate. I worked all day long and dreamed about coming home to you. I held the words close to my soul that gave me hope. I would read the words of the poets, and the words of the songs resonated within me. We let the music flow through us. I've held you. I've kissed you. I've crawled through the dreams of the world. Like beer across the floor from the broken bottles, I've held on to you, holding firmly, never letting go. Always revealing the truth in my soul as I held you. All I needed in that moment was just a touch. When no one would feel or recognize what they couldn't see, that we loved each other. Hand in hand, we walked through the streets of San Jose. Truthfully, we didn't care where in the world our home was. We were everything in the arms of the other. we were patient with each other, waiting for the day when I could call you my own. You fell in the night and I dipped to catch you. Life was everything we experienced when we were salsa dancing. The devil on the outskirts of the city could not find us. Not here. This was our home, a place we could call our own forever. Here we found our liberty. From Harmony's perspective, your dreams became my hopes. Your fears became my anxieties. No longer separate and alone. Now we would dream as one. From Leafy's perspective, forever and always patient with these dreams. We wanted to be where the other was, somewhere fallen asleep on the couch alone, after the hangover, after the stress of sirens throughout the city, after the fratricide had wrought its dreadful course, after you became mine, holy presence so tangible, the world was changed, the lives we lived together were no longer separate. Tears of joy were the only ones we would ever know. A life of new beginnings. We were given crowns. We wore them passionately and bravely, and confronted the world wearing them, never taking them off. We held hands and God gave us everything we needed. Our kingdom was small but greater than the whole world. There was always more to discover and more to love and to passionately care about, to see as passing stars. God sealed us and promised to never leave us. He gave us a home where we would never be threatened. He gave us a love that we could always share, open in the arms of the other. Nothing to hold back, always everything to give, always everything to learn. The flowers of the passing time, beautiful and always alone in the night when no one can see them. We stayed here and never wanted to leave. The gifts you gave me blew me away, and my heart was unable to sustain itself, unable to not burst open for all to see. So much love that nothing could contain it. When you hold me, feel the rhythm of my breath, the truth and the life of an eternal future. Some days the wind grows chilly, and we do nothing except shiver, unable to move. Our song grows silent. Our lives become transparent. You can see through all of our pain in the words I proclaim to the world. In the morning of the storm and then the silence of the passing days, I fall asleep and dream next to you. There is joy in this moment bursting forth, gliding out into the future. I would have walked thousands of miles to get to you, over the mountains during the war, into the perils of disaster. Each day we were fighting for each other, to find a way to be with each other for just another moment. We were hammered down into the ground, overcome by despair, that there were two sides at war, and the money was on the other side. Our side was patient, and could withstand any length of time, because all that exists is time. Our magic was inside our own souls, and whatever magic I had, I got from you. I knew that the mystery we had fallen into, we could never unravel, even if we meditated on it now, between now and the end of all time. My love, my ocean, my anchor, my rescue, my daylight crashing through the darkness, guiding me home to you. A single touch enough to understand you, and no one can love you like I do, and I always want you to be mine. From Harmony's perspective, the desperation within souls alone, runaways from their own place. From Leafy's perspective, we will meet somewhere far away, where we can be together, where the world is sane, it doesn't keep families apart, and would never damn our hearts, or burn down our homes, or allow us to sit alone. When I've lost my strength to write, and the world is nothing but a mundane passing of time, and I can't keep track of the passing days, I think of you. All I want is to nap with you here, in this moment where we ran off together. No one can follow us, or bring us down. No law can contain or trap us. We wear the crowns. From Harmony's perspective, I took a break from writing. Couldn't get myself to lift my pen. Surrounded by the darkness, I retreated into my apartment and sat in the shadows, gloom upon my face. Books I would never read again, lives untouched by the overwhelming confusion of whether or not we will find the world we had dreamed about, and how I will always take for granted the things I have lost and lose them forever. 297. From Harmony's perspective, there was love in the world. There was joy in the arms of love. There was mercy, and love was unfiltered, and flooded the avenues of a broken cistern, which now overflows, quenching the thirst of the world. If you can feel the love in the arms of compassion, you are luckier than most in the world. 298. From Harmony's perspective, while we stay up all night, we labor in our tears. 299. From Harmony's perspective, if you know anything about the passing time, come and hold me so close and whisper the secrets in my ears. 300. From Leafy's perspective, I wandered through the world, and we found each other, and we ran from the creatures that sought our souls, hand in hand. We ran through the nights, two lost souls, drenched in the pouring rain, never to feel secure again. We found a place to sleep, and we slept there together, and expressed our love, and became wholly complete, while remaining unique and separate. 301. From Leafy's perspective, on our long journey through a dreadful world, we encountered many people, and we could never not save them, when they were sinking into the sand, consumed by it and drowned in it. 302. From Leafy's perspective, I only desire to love you, and you don't have to be perfect. You just need to be open, the rays of light seeping in during the morning of isolation. I have risked everything to be close to you, to hold you as an emerald soul. When the world cannot see the value in the love we hold together, hold me closer than the magic you hold close to your soul. Write love songs with me. 303. From Leafy's perspective, on the flight to South Africa, we passed through the turbulence. We passed through the oceans that are now dividing us. I sit back and think about love, and now there is no excuse not to express our love, while I pour my love out for you. I am walking underneath the bridge, the darkness enveloping every corner of my body. I walk through the empty city. The stars and satellites light up the entire world, guiding us as our only source of light. In the moment when both of us feel alone, we can be drenched in the confusion of which path to take. But the angels still guide us through our lives. Eventually the dawn comes in the city, and I wake up on the park bench and watch the people move in quick motion. I would sail across the oceans to get to you. No limit I wouldn't go to get to you. No anthem loud enough that will drown out our song. I miss you like I miss the sunlight, guiding me and warming my skin. I love you like no words I say will ring hollow again. Every word will be exact, resonating and full of purpose. Come with me and walk during the night. Hold me close, and we will both find our way home. I could tell you forever about all the things I am lacking. 304. From Harmony's perspective. The night air sinking through my front door, as I lay desperately asleep, deep in dreams. From Leafy's perspective, these dreams are unlike anything I've had in my life. In these dreams, I'm clinging on to hope, surrounded by voices telling me to give in. And in these dreams, I'm the only one who believes in the world of being awake. But no one else believes this world can be found. No one believes that life can get any better. 305. From Harmony's perspective, we are in Chicago. We are watching the fireworks. We are desperate to be home in the arms of the other. 306. From Leafy's perspective, loveless, lonely, and despairing. Not enough money to do anything but wander these streets alone. 307. From Leafy's perspective, no one will ever use any words other than the ones you are using to describe what you are feeling. One chance to unravel what is inside our own hearts. 308. From Leafy's perspective, burning up in the cold, exasperated at the heights we have soared, in the days we have roared, for just one more chance to become the persons we were always meant to become. We are desperate to evacuate the classroom, where there is no love. 309. From Harmony's perspective, burning up like paper in the wind, lost in a world we will never find again. From Leafy's perspective, you are dreaming in this world. You are longing to forget the one who loved and left. You know that only so much is left in your heart that can be broken before there is nothing left to break, and all that remains can only be insulted but cannot be forgotten. 310. From Leafy's perspective, what if words can make you cry? What if I had something to say that would remind you of places gone and people who have long passed away? Times where there was celebration, watching the sunset. How the sunset stands alone. I have a box full of memories that I never open. I have a binder full of burned CDRs of all the songs we listened to years ago. But we will never use those CDs again. They just sit there, and as they sit, they collect dust, and eventually the CDs are so damaged that no one will listen to what was on them again. If only you could feel the insides of my soul. If only you had a cure for the poison in your inner self. If only there was a way we could thrive in this desperate world. Now the world has become a desperate shell of what it once was. Hollow, enigmatic, spacious. A world we could fill with anything we want to fill it with. I am angry about so many things. The world cries out for help and is rebuked, is forsaken, is never seen or heard from again, and is suffocated, is choked. The damage has been done. The life has been permanently destroyed. A little resurrection is all we need. A little desperation to find a world other than the one we exist in now. We are desperate to find this world. We run in circles after it. We cascade against the pain in our own hearts. We run to the police to tell them about those who are threatening us, but we forget how or why, and then no one can save us. There is a light that passes through the sky and reaches down to this earth, and we can now see everything in this world clearly. We can walk this world and see the hollow crevices of the spears we find ourselves on. We write long poems because we know that we are all here for the long haul. Nothing can separate us from the love of the light that pierces through the ceiling, and we find ourselves in a dreadful classroom again, over and again, where all we can do is stare at the ceiling until the day our sins are forgiven, if it is possible to look past such things and live despite the pain we have caused others, despite how merciless we were to those who were in need, who were in these same classrooms with us, learning the same lessons, but who we scorned. My thoughts are sporadic, jumping all over the place. From Harmony's perspective, when I speak, there is joy in the hearts of those who eventually hear my dying voice, because they will know that what a miracle it is to hear the voice of another. They will know how painful life can become without good things to look forward to. I will hand out books to people for free. I will write the password to my heart on the front page of these books. I will speak the original password long after it has changed, and no one recognizes it. But I was the first one to get here, and I was the last one to leave here. I was the first to envision a future in which both of us are joyfully together. From Leafy's perspective, come and greet the sunrise with me. Come and greet the new day of promise. Come and greet the new day of good success. From Harmony's perspective, come and say goodbye to this night, when we could not see, and we were powerless, unable to fight for ourselves, unable to be who we wanted to be. There is a joy in getting lost inside the pages of a book, in leaving the world you are familiar with. There is joy in the arms of a lover. There is reconciliation in finding the pieces of heaven and piecing them back together. There is a desperate truth in the words I speak to you, hoping you will understand them. 311. From Harmony's perspective, deep caresses of warmth that only come from the folds of your love. Tracing all this charity back to you, I fall into your embrace and bask in it for several lifetimes. And I desire to stay here feeling your love forever. From Leafy's perspective, dilapidating wars, ruins of nations collapsing. And I stay here together, always welcome in your arms. If you are the moon, then I am the sun. The moon illuminated by the lights, giving it back to a lonely world. If you have found the stars, I am right beside you, on the greatest adventure with you. Each day we were alone on opposite ends of the world. You sat and waited, gazing at the lights, on the mountainside, gunshots never wavering, lights always fading until dawn. When morning pierced through the clouds, I waited here for several hours. I scribed out love through my words, and I loved you. I scrambled to call out to you, but no one could hear me. So I implored the wind, and it carried my breath to the moon, which always reminded me of you. I loved you in the chaos of the wind, and my own precious breath was lifted by these winds, where it would live somewhere forever. I slept beside you in my dreams. I clawed with my mind in the desperate hours of night, and I welcomed the day passing, hoping they would bring me closer to you. Deep caresses of truth that collide when we meet again. I hold you close, knowing that all my life I tried to find you, so I never let go. Your heart touched mine. When our threaded hands melded together, I led you to all the places I had walked alone, and told you thousands of stories of wars, of generations lost. We stepped out together and traveled that road, so far from what we had known before, so close to the hope for the future, and we hoped to find heaven somewhere together down the road. 212a. From Harmony's perspective, life, the culmination of creation. We spread our wings, ready to greet the world for the first time. We are never afraid of what we might discover in the dark of the night. All we know is that the wind never calms us. It only batters our home, and silences so many voices that would never otherwise been boisterously loud in this night. I had a picture on my wall of the States, always wanting to return, so many places within the world to see. But I never knew that the borders would be completely shut down. That the things we owned lost their value. We stopped loving them and held on only to love. The streets have become empty, once filled with people selling things all up and down the street. The life within our veins was broken, dull. Our debts were insolvent. Our bravery was gone. The days in which we cascaded headfirst into the storm were gone. The shallow ground beneath our feet gave way to doubts, which we fell through and never again escaped from. 312b. From Harmony's perspective, here I am writing forever, words about what I think the world will be like in 50 years. The world will cascade into anger and hatred until only lawlessness prevails, and an authoritarian government rises from the ashes of the chaos. From Leafy's perspective, the birds in the sky were gone because they knew what was about to happen to the world. They were created by God first and had a deeper connection to this world and the stars above their heads than we ourselves had. They fled from violence, and their joy in their souls was like gasoline, and nothing could extinguish it. From Sanger's perspective, I read her words as I sat on the beach, and I knew that she had predicted everything we were going through. For her, the malls and homes never burned, but she was writing about the experience I was having now. But never to find her Leafy again. The death of star-crossed lovers was a premonition of the things that were to come. With both of them gone, there would be no way to escape. The world descending on its course, cascading into the flames, the ones she was writing about, but never experienced, but were so real to me. 213a. From Harmony's perspective, we will not be locked up anymore. We need to be together. Unlock the doors, and we will flood the streets. Those with so little take from those who have almost nothing. The fires flood the world, so real to me, And soon we will all know the pain of being burned, being prodded and bruised, pricked in the side. The robots in the street have all gone out forever. We are on the boulevard of the lost world. Here I am, walking alone down these lonesome streets. Nothing but debris from the stores that were completely looted. Nothing but cancer in our bones. The grass itself burned. They raged against the earth that gave them life. If you can hear me in your heart, hold me closer as the one voice of reason in your soul. And when everyone else in the world has gone completely and irrevocably mad, I walk outside and feel the rain on my face, falling from the blue sky. The jackal's marrying the wolf's wife. Now in the streets I will always be alone here. All my friends are dead or left. So many voices and animosity, violence toward the other, is all that is left. People I once knew, but will no longer recognize, turned against each other violently in the street. One man started shouting a racial slur. Where fields of flowers once were, there are gravestones, and in front of the gravestones, these same flowers cut up and laid on the tomb. They are dying like the light inside our souls, now and eternally. No one can ever stop the light within the blossoming flowers from going out forever. 313b. From Leafy's perspective, the nights pass and I slip away. I sink into these oceans that submerge me in their mighty waves. I fall deeply into them. I know that each day that passes will pass more slowly than the last, causing time to be brutally slow. And we will reach the end, or the end of all time, always be waiting for the end of time. The passion of my soul that was left here, and never left, through all the chaotic times during our lives. From Harmony's perspective, we fled from the source of our own life. Instead, we drank the gasoline and inhaled the drugs. And when you lit the match, there was nothing we could do to prevent our insides from completely boiling over. Nothing we could do to stop the spread of flames. From Leafy's perspective, when all the stores were nothing but ash, and we had nowhere to buy food, we were alone in the cold of the winter, with no way to find warmth. So I stayed inside my car and never left. Always traveled from city to city, never to find any place to find home. My music that played from my soul was louder. My noise was gloriously patient, waiting for its turn to be spread and sung all throughout the world, before it would be let go and flow through the world like water. 313c. From Leafy's perspective, I am your atom bomb. From Harmony's perspective, I am your patient dove waiting to fly through the sky, a sign of love throughout all of the world. The card you draw denoting the future, that there will be no love, nothing romantic about death, and no other cards denoting this future will be drawn, because the other cards would always mislead us. The only certain card we draw is the card of death, the torment within our souls, denoting the last piece of torment within ourselves. 213d. From Leafy's perspective, when the layers of myself unravel like the time I forgot, mind filled to the brim with regrets, I remember when we stood alone together. Now time has taken you far away, somewhere I could not follow, and I sit somewhere in the amphitheater of the time we forgot together. The same scene, verse of the song, passing by, with the thought ripping into my mind. But at the same time, my life is torn between what I see and what I believe. No one coming down to save me. Life churned like a burning sea. My eyes were wide, never stopping, always moving forward to what we desired, the city burning up with our forgotten truth. From Harmony's perspective, on flights across the nation, nothing looked familiar. Looking out at the ground of this world, where I have one desire, to become a great writer, my only purpose in this life, to explode like passion, like a soldier, never giving up or letting go of the hope I believe in, the love I believe in, always holding on in the future, while it turns and brings us to places where I would always sit patiently watching the time pass. From Leafy's perspective, the vicious nature inside me was never calm, always violent like the oceans of a distant world that we will never find, always wander away from where we are. Come here, hold me in this during this storm. Anchor yourself so that you would no longer be moved. I was there waiting outside, writing, somewhere between the clouds and the grass. From Harmony's perspective, hold me closer in the storm, the weather growing immensely, never changing, our minds about those we hate, always swelling in with emotion, as those who would never reveal their face led us away, to a place where we would stand alone, holding our hope to the flame, and it burned. We spoke to those flames and we waited for an answer forever. For information about how you can help those in need in South Africa, regardless of race or religion, etc., please visit feedsa.co.za. A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Lao Tzu, Chinese philosopher. Reminder that no one is unredeemable. Joseph Leo Hickey lives in Virginia. He is the author of 12 other poetry books, including Baptism of Apathy, Unity, Love Poems at the End of Our Lives, Leafy, The Last Poem, Purity Redeemed, The Penultimate Poems, Harmony, The Revenant, I Know Nothing But Miracles, Walt Whitman Speaks to the Modern World, True Daughter of the Soil, and There's a Serenity in the Dark. He is currently 29 years old. He is the founder of Melodium House. YouTube, All the Stars Are Dead. Joseph at melodiumhouse.com. Thank you for listening.